On your personal staff, there were only two people at the Department of Education.
That's right.
Professor Hill and this other person.
That's right.
Who was going to law school at the time.
And for two professionals, there was also a secretary.
And then and a secretary.
That's right, Diane Holt.
Yes. Now, as a result, I take it was not uncommon for you to talk one-on-one with Professor Hill while at the Department of Education.
That's true. That was also true with the other person.
And with regard to both these persons, I assume conversations with either or both would take place fairly frequently if they were your two. Or let me not assume anything. Would they take place fairly frequently? Would you see them more than once a day, for example, in the conduct of your affairs at the Department of Education?
It would not be uncommon, but I would not assign a number to it. It may be that some days I may see them none, and other days I might see them once.
Well, up here, for example, as you know from working in Senator Danforth's staff, the chief of staff, the head of the committee, the person in charge of the legislative operation, those people, generally speaking, have immediate access to Senator Danforth, Thurman, Biden. I mean, that's kind of how it works up here. And I don't want to confuse how it works here with how it worked there. I assume that if Professor Hill wanted to see you, she would have essentially the same kind of access you observed the chief of staff would have here on the Hill to the office in which you worked.
No, that's not an accurate comparison.
Well, then I'd like to hear what
the deputy assistant secretary would have that kind of access.
The deputy assistant secretary would have that access to you. I see. Would you describe the type of access that Professor Hill and her professional responsibilities at education had to you?
I think it was my secretary normally made those kinds of judgments. If I were available, if I were not busy, if I was not in the middle of something and the matter merited it, she certainly didn't have to make an appointment.
Right. Now, this other person who worked in the capacity similar to Professor Hill's, as you described it, what was his name or her name?
It was her name. Her name was Tricia Healy.
Healy, H-E-A-L-E-Y?
I think so. Yeah. But she perhaps had more access because I believe, and that's been 10 years ago, we met at the beginning and at the end of the day routinely. She is the person who followed the list of assignments that I had within the organization, people who needed to be involved in certain projects, people with whom I needed to touch base, projects that were finished and unfinished, evaluations that needed to be done, those kinds of things.
Now, either at the Department of Education or at EEOC, when Professor Hill would have access to you to be speaking to you either at her initiative or your initiative in the performance of your duties, was it unusual for those conversations or exchanges to take place alone, just with the two of you?
It wasn't unusual, just as it wasn't unusual for Tricia Healy. Right. But normally, I have basically an open door, and my secretary, Diane, would guard that door, basically.
Yeah. So that, like the conduct of any business, usually when not all decisions or all judgments that are brought to you by staff require you calling in all the staff. A lot of those decisions are made as they are here, one-on-one.
No, I think that's going too far. I made those kinds of decisions one-on-one, generally with the deputy assistant secretary.
I see.
There were any number of problems that we had within the agency, and I believe that when I made those kinds of decisions, it would have been with him. I would have spent a significant amount of time with Tricia Healy, I think, with going through the assignments, and that would be one-on-one, but it would usually be more of going through a list of things to get done.
Now, in your discussions, conversations, meetings with Professor Hill, you have indicated to the committee, and I don't want to put words in her mouth either, but I got the impression, I don't have the record, but I got the impression that you've stated you viewed her as you're being in the role of a mentor like you have with all people who've been on your personal staff. Is that a correct?
I looked out for the members of my personal staff. I made sure that I tried to be aware of their careers and aware of their progress, et cetera, not just a mere employer-employee relationship. Again, that was true in the case of my other assistant, who was, I believe at that time, either finishing night law school and or studying for the bar exam. And there was simply an effort to make some accommodation. I thought it was a good idea, and she was doing very well.
Now, were there ever occasions, again, in attempting to find out where there's agreement, were there ever occasions that you would have an opportunity or occasion to be speaking with Professor Hill in either capacity, EEOC or as her boss at education, where you would discuss matters either as her mentor in that general category, looking out for her interest, or in any other capacity, that where you would discuss matters other than business matters?
I think that there may be occasions when we would debate politics, as I indicated. She was from Yale Law School, and of course I was interested in what had happened to the law school. There were some people, I think, who'd clerked on the Supreme Court who'd been in her class, that sort of thing, similar to what I do with my clerks. They have their own friends, they have their ideas about the world, and occasionally they will chat with me about those, or if they have problems. I think Anita Hill had some health problems from time to time. I can't remember exactly what they were. I believe either back or allergies or something like that. It would be those sorts of things.